So I'm done with my stories. So good evening, friends and neighbors and citizens. This is a meeting of the Stayton City Council for Monday, the 3rd of February, 2020. I'm going to call the meeting to order, and let's have a flag salute. Would all so inclined please join me? Let me get up here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Anyway, okay. Are there any additions to the agenda? I don't hear any. Are there declarations of ex-parte contact, conflict of interest, or bias?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Go
I will
ahead,
have
please.
one for the award of community improvement grants. I'm going to actually have a conflict of interest on that. I'm named as a neighbor on one of the applications for that, so I will not be voting on that or taking part in deliberations.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Mr. Mayor, I
Yes.
will also be declaring conflict with that, as my neighborhood has submitted a grant for that,
Okay.
proposal for that. So I'll be abstaining from that vote. So hopefully Jordan shows up, so we can get
I'm here.
Jordan?
or not Jordan, sorry, Paige will show up for a quorum. But you get to vote if we're short a quorum, right?
If we don't have a quorum, we would have to delay the
No, we'll have to defer
We've
it
got a
down.
quorum. We've got 4.
Do we do it by the
Well,
time
but we don't
it gets here
have, we
to
don't
that?
have, is a quorum 3
Oh.
voting members?
Yeah, it'd be 3 voting members, correct.
Okay.
Oh, I can vote.
So I think what we can see is when the item comes, if it's here, if not, we can
You guys,
push it off to the next council meeting.
Keith,
Or could
am
we
I
come back
correct
to
in
it?
that these folks, you can declare a conflict and still vote?
Yeah, I think the issue is both of these folks have felt like it's a direct conflict and as such should not vote because they're on part of the application. So I think what we can do is wait and see. We could always move the agenda item as well to later in the meeting.
I like that.
And so I think we can do that with just a...
Okay.
that.
Anyway, anyone else feel quivering on that tonight? No? Okay, let's go on. There are no appointments this evening. Public comments, let's go to those. Russ Strohmeyer, please.
Russ Strohmeyer, 325 West Washington Street here in Stayton. I just wanted to bring up an issue that I brought up last meeting. Not that one.
Not
a
that
different
one.
issue. Not yet. Anyway, about the concern about if the homeless start moving into Stayton in masses. And I said I hope somebody within the city comes up with a plan. I don't know if that's been addressed yet or not, but I just wanted to reiterate my concern. One reason, I do have a friend that rides the transit bus from Stayton to Salem every day back and forth to work, and he's telling me that the transit bus is actually picking up homeless in one area, taking them downtown in the morning, picking them up downtown, taking them back to this remote area. And it would be so easy for them to just stay on the bus and come out here. And anyway, and again, I'm not without compassion, but I just think that the city of Stayton needs to have a plan of what we're going to do if that happens. And I just wanted to reiterate my concern on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Russ. Bill Martinek, please.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. My name is Bill Martinek, and I reside at 15556 Coon Hollow Road Southeast in Stayton, Oregon. And my comment, I assumed that we would speak under the public comment during the community improvement grants, but I can speak now if you wish.
I think so. Under public comments, sure.
Okay. Well, my comments were pertaining to the award of the community grants. Specifically, I was here to support the award of the of a community grant to the Stayton Food Bank.
Okay.
My family and I have been supporters of the food bank for a number of years, and we think it's a very important part of the community of Stayton. I guess I was a little bit surprised that we're awarding a grant to repair a block wall 7 times more money than we're awarding the food bank. And I don't know if that strikes anyone else as being a little bit strange that the community feels that it's more important to reconstruct a block wall than it is to support the needy people of the area. That just strikes me as a little odd there. But again, I'd like to offer the offer that we made, Mr. Porter, directly to you a couple of years ago as a method to support the food bank, and just let you know that offer that we made is still viable.
Still good, huh? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. All right.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Just for clarification, because there's several new counselors, can you just reiterate what that offer was?
Mr. Porter can handle that, I think, pretty well.
You're going to ask me to remember what we talked about 2 years ago?
Well, if you want to do that, I'll be happy to provide copies of that to the council via email.
That'd probably
if
be
you'd like
better,
to see
Bill.
that way.
That would be great. Thank you.
Everybody would have everything out in front of them.
That'd be better.
Thank you.
Yep, be happy to do that.
Okay. Takes me off the hook, too. Thank you,
Sure.
Bill.
You got it.
For now, anyway. Okay. That was the only 2 requests we had for public comment. Let's go ahead then with consent agenda for tonight. Minutes of January 21st of this year, and a memorandum of understanding with the Sandy M Hospital. So what would you folks like to do with that?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I vote that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay.
Seconded.
A motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented. And everyone's had a chance to look at that. So, let's just go to a vote on that. All in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, we'll declare the motion passed 5-0. We don't have any public hearings tonight, and so we'll go to, under general business, a railroad letter of support presentation. And Kevin Mannix's office, which is promoting this, has asked Nicole Weston, who is a native of our community at some time in the recent past, to make this presentation. We had questions last time when I brought this idea forward, and the council wanted to hear more, so Mr. Mannix's office asked Nicole to come out and share with us. So you've got it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members and staff for having us present tonight. My name is Nicole Weston. As the mayor pointed out, I am from this area. I went to St. Mary's and I graduated from Regis High School. Lived in this area for a number of years. I went to University of Portland for undergrad and then moved up to Seattle, where I attended Seattle U Law School and was a prosecutor for King County, Seattle for almost 17 years. I recently just moved home and I'm focusing on victims' rights and public safety. So bear with me on the transportation part. Mr. Mannix and the associates who are working on this are actually in Coos Bay. So I am here to answer the questions that hopefully I'll be able to, and if not, I told Mr. Mayor that I would be happy to bring those questions back and we can send them back out in email form. Part of the reason I agreed to do this, even though I know very little about the transportation, is because I am from this area, and I actually worked at the cannery, and I do remember when there were actually trains that used to run in our area. And so with that, what the proposal is we're asking the mayor, with the approval of the city council, to write a letter of support encouraging Union Pacific to negotiate with the Oregon Cavalier Group to purchase the railway. At this point, there is already a owner or leasee of part of the railway, and as it has laid out, only part of the rail line is actually operational at this point. So right now there is operation from Silverton to Woodburn, but not from Silverton to Stayton. There used to be, as some people know, that used to be a actual viable rail line. There are at least 4 washouts at 2 different sites, making that not viable at this point. But what the Oregon Cavalier Group is trying to do is they're trying to purchase this railway to make that actually operational. The group has actually already gone to businesses and said, if we make this operational, will you use this rail line? And the Oregon Cavalier Group has secured enough business that they think the rail line will actually be profitable. One of the main things to point out about this request is that the Oregon Cavalier Group is not asking any city to put up any money. Almsville had a question about that as well, as there are a number of security issues and safety issues that need to be corrected to make this rail line operational. Are you then going to come to the city and say, hey, this is now your problem? And Oregon Cavalier Group has said, no, that is not going to be what is going to be asked. That is part of the actual money that will be put aside to actually make the railway possible, if that makes sense. So this is not an ask that you support this. This is an ask or that you agree with all of the ins and outs of it. What it is just an ask that you say to Union Pacific, this would benefit Stayton, this would benefit our farmers, this would benefit a number of people within our community. So we're asking that you in good faith negotiate with Oregon Cavalier Group. That's all the ask is at this point. And I'm happy to answer any questions, but really that's what it's looking for. We wanted to make sure we sent out the white paper that I hope everyone had an opportunity to review before this evening, as well as letters of support that we've received from a number of mayors from all surrounding cities. Sublimity Mayor was just contacted recently, as well as Jervis. While Sublimity and Jervis and Salem and Kaiser are not technically on the railway, they are impacted. So we've asked all the surrounding cities as well for their support. Also, we have letters from the three Marion County Commissioners, all in support of this, as well as letters from 2 state representatives and 1 senator that also agrees that this is a good thing for Oregon, is to get our railways back up and going, and this actually benefits Marion County and Stayton in particular. So with that, questions?
Okay.
Ms. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead, please, and welcome.
Hi.
joining us this
Thanks for
evening.
coming down, because I did have questions.
Sure.
I was curious what businesses have come on board in our town for the railroad, and then also when would that washout, when is that projected to be fixed?
I'm not sure that I know the specifics for which in Stayton particularly have agreed to use the rail line. I will ask Mr. Mannix if he can provide that to you, which companies within Stayton have said yes. I know there's companies around the rail line and within Marion County that have agreed, but I'm not sure if there's any in Stayton specific, but I will ask that for you. And again, with the timing, that's going to depend on the timing of whether or not the purchase goes through, how quickly the purchase goes through, and those specifics as well. So that might be a little bit of a moving timeline, but that is, I know that's the main priority of this proposal, is to get that up and operational, because without it, that's their whole main focus, right, is to get from Silverton to Stayton to be back operational. And the hope is at some point to continue to use this as for goods, but at some point maybe use commuter trains or use excursion trains. There has been talk since, as everyone knows, Mount Angel has Oktoberfest, and to run commuter trains for those type of excursions down the line, but they will use it for goods initially.
Go ahead, others?
Yeah, follow up.
Okay, please.
Thanks. So I'm a little bit disappointed that we didn't have information of how it would affect our community or a timeline of how that would affect our community. Do you have anything that you can give us that will let us know how this benefits our community and why we would want to be on board for this?
Well, if you have a rail line that is working and you have goods and services that can come in and out of your city at an easier rate, at a more efficient rate that benefits the community, there will also be on this rail line an actual operational center of business, which right now the business that runs it is in McMinnville, so it's not even along the rail line. Anything that brings in and out goods quicker and more efficiently will benefit the community. In terms of what goes to and from NORPAC, we all know that that's a little up in the air right now, which is unfortunate, but that is right on the rail line as well. And so if you're looking for more specifics about the businesses that have been spoken to, I'm more than happy to get that information for you. Because unfortunately, just with the specifics of what businesses have been spoken to, I can't answer that at this time. But we will find that for you, for sure.
Mr. Mayor? Thank you for coming out here.
Oh, sure.
So I've heard conflicting information on whether or not the rail line is actually going to come down this far to our area. Do you have any information on that?
Well, that is what the proposal is that if this Oregon Cavalier Group purchases this rail line, it will go to Stayton. So it will go, the operational rail line will be from Woodburn all the way down to Stayton, which was the intent when the rail line was built and what it was used for years in this community.
Other questions? Other
Mr. Mayor?
thoughts? Go
Yes.
ahead.
Has the Cavalier Group done any assessment on, like I know that Almsville was concerned about the railroad going through their town and those areas of safety and concern and whatnot. So you're saying that that the railroad is taking care of it, the company is taking care of it. So have any assessments been done on how much that in particular is going to cost, or what it's going to cost to bring the railroad down here? I guess in my mind, I'm just concerned if you say, yeah, it's going to come down here, and then down the line you say, oh, well, it's going to cost us too much to fix what we need to fix for the railroad to come down. And then, I mean, obviously you get to change your mind, but any information on that?
Well, just for a point of clarification, Almsville was not concerned about the railway going through their town. They're actually very excited for that possibility. What they were concerned about is whether or not Almsville would be asked to fix some of the safety and security issues. So it was not a concern of them going through the town. They're actually excited that rail service would be restored. If you look at the letters from the Marion County Commissioners, they actually do discuss that there was an in-depth report done back in, I think, 2017 or 2018 that the Oregon Cavalier Group is very aware of and knows the pitfalls and knows kind of what is all out there. So all of that would be encompassed before purchasing. There is, if this is done the correct way and the way that the Oregon Cavalier Group is proposing to do it, is there will be service and it will be taken care of. They are including all of those costs. There are comprehensive evaluations that have been done. There have been two rail experts that have contracted with the Oregon Cavalier Group that are able to tell exactly what is needed, where is needed, and the costs of that before going in and purchasing the actual rail line.
Thank you, and thank you for that clarification on Almsville.
Sure.
Nicole, is that intermodal yard at Brooks, the proposed intermodal yard, close to or on UP's main line, is that kind of a hinge for this whole thing?
The way I understand it is that they are separate projects. This is a complete separate entity from what Brooks would be. Because again, the main focus here is we have goods and services in our communities that were unable to get transported in a more efficient way. We have farmers who are not being served. We have other services that would be utilized by using this rail line. And having a more efficient way to do that is what the group is hoping on. Now, I believe that this was spawned from that project, but this is completely separate from what the Brooks Intermodal facility would be. And that's why they would ensure that there was a operational business and actual office along the Marion County rail line.
Okay, all right, thank you. Other questions, thoughts?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes?
Does this connect at all to the, like, Coos Bay? Like, do you guys need to get through here to get to Coos Bay at all? Or that this is completely separate?
This is separate, is my understanding, and I will obviously,
I would love to know if that's true, because I would like to know if we're,
Well, I would
if we're like a
appreciate,
way through.
I am speaking truth, and I would tell you if it's not.
Well, I don't mean it that way. I just mean I
But-
would like to know that that's fact.
And that is something that we will clarify, but my understanding is that that is a separate operation or a separate potential. Again, the main focus here is from Stayton to Woodburn.
Okay, follow up, Mr. Mayor?
Okay, others? Questions? More?
Yeah.
Oh, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I do. Because we're going to get answers to them. So I want to know, want to know the answers. How, can you find out for us how this is going to benefit cost-wise for our farmers and our businesses to transport their goods through rail versus how they're doing it now? How are you guys going to keep those costs down for them? I'm also curious about like the commuter train, if you guys are going to do that type of a thing. Do you guys have any plans for low income rates and things like that? So,
And the commuter train is going to be a ways off. I mean,
Yeah.
you have to have a rail line that's going to be profitable and beneficial for commerce before you can do the commuter train. So that is something that is a long-term project, but or projection, but it's really now the focus is on the commerce and getting goods and services to where they need to be.
I get that, but we're putting our city's like support behind. If we're going to put our city's support behind this with our the city name on it at all, even if it's just the mayor's name with the city of Stayton, I want to make sure that you guys have a vision if you're going to talk about commuter trains, even in the future, that you guys have a plan for that, and that that's also going to benefit our community. All of those things are important for at least for me to get behind something like that.
There's a question there, right?
I was asking about the low.
Okay.
No, yeah, she's just asking me to find out.
Yeah.
Other questions or thoughts? I guess the only thing left is to say, the council okay with me signing a letter of support for these folks to try this?
Not until we get the answers for all the stuff
Okay, well,
that we just asked.
what questions do we have that she can answer tonight? Anything else?
No.
No?
So we have to wait for answers.
Have to wait?
So you make a motion? That's what we need to do next, right?
There are more questions that people would like answered, right?
Yep.
Okay. And what's the council's wish on this? Do we need to get Mr. Mannix to come to another meeting?
I think we just need to get answers and then put it back on the agenda to discuss.
You folks comfortable with extending this a little longer?
Yeah, I think once we get the answers in email form, then we can push it off to the next agenda. I think we're fine
Okay.
about that.
That'll work.
I guess we'll do that then, Nicole.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Nicole.
Yeah, okay. All right. Next, Mr. Fleischman, award of community improvement grants.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, members of the public. The issue before you this evening is the award of community improvement grants. You may recall our past discussions about this. It was, I believe, in September. We were before the council with sort of an outline of how the program would work. Since this was a new program, we wanted to get your feedback on what we had come up with as a conceptual framework and the objectives and the assessment criteria. Projects for community improvement grants fall into two broad categories: support for programs and services that directly benefit Stayton residents, and neighborhood improvement projects. Applications were made available back in October with their return required by the end of November. We received 7 applications requesting a total of $22,300. The budget included $20,000 for grants. There were applications from 3 different neighborhood groups and 4 applications from nonprofit organizations. Staff developed some scoring criteria and reviewed each of the applications. And the staff report that you have in front of you includes the staff's recommendation that 6 of the 7 applications be funded, with 1 of them receiving a reduced amount from what they asked for. The staff's recommendation is that the applications from the Sylvan Springs, the West Town, and the Jefferson Place neighborhoods be funded, and that the applications from the Stayton Community Food Bank, Revitalize Downtown Stayton, be funded at the requested amount, and that the application from the Community Emergency Response Team, or CERT, be funded at a level of $3,700, which would give you a total of the $20,000 that is available in the budget. You've got in the packet all of the applications that were submitted. You've got the details of the scoring that staff put together. There were 4 of us that reviewed the applications. Each came up with a numerical score, and you can see the total points that each application received from the 4 staff members that scored them in your staff report. And if you've got further questions, I will do my best to answer them.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Fleischman or things out of the packet?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes?
I'm just curious, Dan, on the West Town grant, it says that the total project is $8,000 and they're requesting 7. It doesn't say where the other, doesn't say like in-kind or cash, where the other 1,000 is coming from.
Yeah, which is why, yeah, it doesn't. That's why in the staff report, it was listed as a $7,000 budget.
And not
because
8.
they did not indicate. There was another application that the math didn't seem to add up right either. So
Okay.
in that case, they were indicating a significant in-kind contribution that just didn't really appear to be part of the project that they were saying was going to be funded. So it's not included in the summary either.
Okay.
Dan, quick question. I probably should know this. Is there any, it probably doesn't exist anymore, a homeowners association for West Town? An existing one that
As far as I know, there never was one.
never was one?
I've never seen any indication that there were CC&Rs or any document to establish a homeowners association
That
in
would
West Town.
have been able to help maintain that wall over the years.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, the neighborhood was platted in 9 or 10 different plats over a course of 10 or 12 years. There does not appear, I've never seen any documentation that there was anything to set up an HOA or to set up a mechanism for maintenance of that wall. I mean, just each individual owner owns their 50, 60, 70, whatever feet of wall.
What's that first segment of West Town date from?
I believe that it was the late 60s was the first plat.
Sounds about right.
Mr.
Yeah.
Mayor?
Thank you, Dan. Yes?
Dan, just for clarification's sake, so these amounts were awarded based on the applications, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
With the recommendation is that 5 of the applications be funded at the requested amount, 1 be funded at a reduced amount, and the lowest scoring application not be funded.
Mr. Mayor, follow-up? And
Certainly, go ahead.
so you had the total points, and were you just saying like the recommendation for the lowest amount, because we only have the 20,000, so you just took the lowest scoring application and reduced that amount? Is that what happened?
The lowest scoring application, we are recommending not be funded.
The second
The
lowest?
second lowest application be funded at a reduced
Okay.
amount, because that's the end of the money.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, other questions or thoughts on this?
Mr. Mayor. Hey,
Counselor?
thank you. Dan, I really am loving the metrics that we have this time. I'm also wondering if there's a way for like next year, if we can maybe have like a minimum score where it's just like a threshold. If it doesn't meet the community needs by a certain amount, then I'm sorry, we just aren't going to give that out, and we'll save it for like the next year or something like that. Because I would hate for like, kind of like Mr. Martinek was saying, I would hate for, the food bank to have, need more money than that, but we're giving it out to something that didn't really even meet a minimum threshold. I just feel like we should have one more metric.
Go ahead. Oh, did you have another question?
I was just wondering if we could do that, and what the other counselors thought,
Oh,
because I'm just one counselor.
This being the first year of this program, we developed the scoring criteria after the applications were submitted. I think we're now in the position of having some scoring criteria, and that can be worked into the application so that the applicants know what it is they're supposed to, how to pitch their programs, essentially.
Not this year, like next
Yes.
year, yeah.
So,
Like,
yes.
okay.
no, this is
In the
great.
future,
This is
we
great.
can do whatever the council wants.
Yeah, no, I love this. This is great.
So-
I wish this is what we were doing with our community, not our community improvement grants, the other ones. What are they called? The $5,000 ones.
That was the community grants.
Oh, that's the community grants. These are community improvement grants.
So
right?
this'll-
Neighborhood grants.
everyone okay? This will work.
No, it's good. I was just curious about like the next
Okay.
time. It's beautiful.
Okay. What do you folks want to do with this?
I would go ahead and move to fund the applications as recommended by staff.
Okay.
I second.
We've got a motion to go ahead and approve these these things, this community improvement grants. And there were what, $20,000 to play with? Dan?
Correct, $20,000 is what was
$20,000,
budgeted
okay.
for these grants.
Divided up among six recipients. Okay, so a motion and a second. And is there any other discussion? Go ahead, please.
Yes, I just thought of this. So what do I know it says the city will oversee the money dispersed, but I'd love to see like a follow-up on pictures, or like a member of the, of the different groups come in and just talk to us about their organizations, and so, or West Town, Sylvan Springs. That'd be really nice to just see.
In other words, since we have some CERT members here, it might be fun to see them come back, somebody come back in, what, a month or 6 months, and say what kinds of things they spent that on.
So the money has to be dispersed by June, so
Okay,
around there or so.
sometime after June.
That
Or
Okay.
would just
even
be
like a
nice.
letter or anything, just
Yeah, just
like
something
letting us
to
know.
follow up. I would just be curious
Yeah.
to see the.
It's just, I would say that's probably just anecdotal, not a requirement.
No,
Right.
no,
Right,
no.
right.
Just it would just be fun to see that and how
Yeah.
the money is being put back in the community.
and hopefully that would encourage more people to request the money, so.
I like them coming to meetings like they are tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, okay,
I think, Mr. Mayor?
yes.
I think that it's so cool to see so many neighborhoods getting things fixed
Starting
that
to
they've
get-
been,
Yeah.
that have been an eyesore for so long. I mean, I don't know how many years I've driven past the West Town Wall. And it's really great to know that we have money that otherwise it probably wouldn't have been fixed, just because it costs $7,000 to fix it. And who has $7,000 just laying around? So I'm very excited about this.
Imagine living here since that was brand new and it was spectacular at the time.
Yeah.
Neat. Okay, Alyssa, if there's no other discussion, Alyssa, would you poll the council on this, please?
Sure. Counselor McDonald?
Yes.
Counselor Ort?
Yes.
Counselor Patty?
Abstain.
Counselor Mullen?
Abstain.
Counselor Hook?
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0.
3-0, okay. Good.
Mr. Mayor, you forgot about the public discussion on this topic. It's in the agenda.
I
You went
did.
in there.
Do we dare go back and take questions from the public on it? I missed that, I'm sorry. Russ, I was looking over here at the program itself instead of the agenda item. We've already voted on it.
It's just a general comment.
I think I'll allow it. I think so. Just in
Well,
the,
hold on, do we need to,
just out of fairness.
like procedurally,
No,
do we need to
go
do
ahead.
anything?
Just a general comment.
Well,
Prerogatives of the chair, go on.
no,
Mi-
point
Mr.
of
Mayor.
order. Mr. Mayor,
No.
we have to
I'd like to make a motion to have the public comment that we missed be moved to right now in the agenda, for
that's-
just general comment.
That's where it is.
Right.
Yeah.
I wanted to make a motion about it, though.
I don't think it needs
I
a motion,
second.
does it?
I feel like it does, because we don't have privilege of the chair. That's not a thing.
This has got to be worth something.
For everybody in the audience, we have to follow rules and we have to make it fair for everyone, so
That's why it is
that's.
a public comment.
Yes.
Exactly,
but
and
that's why
we're trying to right that wrong that we
make
just did
sure
here.
that we're doing
in
it
the right way. So,
So do we,
there's
This
a
bunch
motion
will
and a
never
second.
let
do
me
we
wing
need
it,
to,
Russ.
how do we need to do that?
Okay, a
Do
motion
we need
and a
to walk
second.
back our,
I don't think we can walk back the motion at this point, but I think you can definitely say at this point the council would like to vote and allow him to speak since we missed the item.
okay. So, my second stance.
So we do have a motion and a second to
Yes.
Allow public.
To allow
allow
public
a
comment.
public comment after a vote. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, we'll declare the motion passed. Russ, you have the floor for whatever it takes.
Russ Strohmeyer, 325 West Washington Street. I better make this good, huh?
Yeah.
First of all, I really want to applaud everybody's efforts to improve the city of Stayton. I too was here in the 60s when the wall was built, and our family didn't think of it as spectacular. Most of the comments I heard was it was the Berlin Wall, because it was, you know, big deal in Stayton. Anyway, but what I wanted to say, and I know the decision has been made, I wasn't going to dispute it tonight, but again, really, $20,000 to beautify a neighborhood versus $20,000 to repair those city sidewalks that are dangerous and hazardous. I mean, I really question the wisdom of this decision. And I know it's made, and I wasn't going to dispute this tonight because it's gone this far, but I really hope that you'll think about this next year. $20,000. I pointed out many times the city's hazardous sidewalks. You can look right in front of the City Hall, in front of the Public Works Department, and see those that should be fixed. $20,000 can go a ways towards fixing those sidewalks. Thanks for allowing me to speak.
Okay.
Thank you.
Russ.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Survive that crisis. Yes.
we also skipped the MOU with the hospital.
No, it's
That was part of the
No, that
consent
was on the
agenda.
consent agenda.
Okay, gotcha, sorry.
Yeah.
Apologies.
All right, it's okay. Budget to actual 2019-2020 fiscal year as of December 31st of 2019. Staff report. Susanna, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Susanna?
I have no mic. Hello. Good evening, Mayor, Council, and community. Let me get somehow I have.
We're going to get rid of that.
Here we go.
No, that's
Where's the
fine.
mouse? It's ran away.
That's what the council rules changes.
Voila.
Anyway, Susanna?
So this evening, okay, now you can really see my report. So I'm going to give an update this evening at where we are on the half-year update from the budget to actuals. These numbers are as of December 31st, which is literally halfway. We're 6 months into the fiscal year. In closed, I gave you a budget to actual report using the same form that I did for the unaudited actuals for the year end. So it'd be the similar format at this point. Is it going to cooperate? There it goes. Okay. So as of the end of December, we've received $6.2 million in revenue has come in. Our property taxes being $2.4 million, which is about 92% of what we budgeted. And our franchise fees are coming in about 41% from our budget to actuals. And license and permits are just over $6,000, which is around 22%. Our charge for services is 48%. Intergovernmental came in at 24%. And then just the combination of interest and fees are at 48%. The overall revenue that's come in to date is at 55%. With half the year budget, it's on track to what's to be projected. The like intergovernmental being only at 24% is not alarming, because those are a lot of those are based on grant applications, like the CBDD grant comes in based on the applications and timing of the funding. So those are nothing to be alarmed about, like, oh no, we may not get what we projected. It's just because the timing of the money coming in. With fees for service, our charge for service at 48, that's within reason of with the year. It's nothing alarming for why it would be not at 50 or a little bit over. Remembering the pool was closed longer this year, so when the year ends out, that may be a factor in the total number, but as it stands, we're in a stable place where that's coming in. Our property taxes, they're based on the timing of when they're paid, and so the reason the majority of the money is sitting there is because the majority of the money comes in October, November, and December. The bulk of it for the entire year comes in those 3 months. So all in all, when you look at our revenues that are charged for services, about 46% of our funding, where the taxes are 40%, and all the other little miscellaneous things add up to 14% of our revenue, which is no real change from last year. Those percentages were about the same. So I wanted to give you a look. This is the actual cash that was received for the property taxes and the local gas tax. We do get that on a monthly basis. As you can see, July, August, and September, and some of October, most of those are prior year taxes that people are paying on delinquent accounts. In October, everybody gets their current year taxes, and you see the majority of the population pays their property taxes on time. The city as a whole has about a 95% on the average collection rate from what the tax assessors say that our tax amount should be, so, which is good.
Okay.
And then when you're looking at the expenditures side, we do the same thing. We take a look at the expenses, our budget to actuals. We know that we're 50% into the year. We can see that all of these are within range. The police department and courts is at 54%. That's not alarming because expenditures, a lot of them may have a one-time expenditure that's due at a certain time of the year, and those are accounted. So if any of those percentages were more like in the 70%, then we would be concerned, unless we knew it really was a one-time bill coming in and it's going to tilt the scale and we're not going to have it for the rest. At this state, our expenditures are pretty stable for the general fund, and we're on track with what we expected the expenditures to be, so, which is nice.
I have a question.
Okay.
Can you explain the mayor and city council, because I just want to make sure that everyone understands that we do not get paid $46,000 to be on the council. We get paid zero.
You get paid zero. No, that's where the money
like
is
what
for your
that-
grant. That's where, what's all in there? Let me see what's in there.
Membership.
I haven't even started spending my share of that yet.
If your community block grants and stuff is in there, things that the council's doing for their trainings are in there, and like
Membership fees.
membership fees for, yeah, things like that.
Thank you.
Things that support the mayor and the council.
Yes.
And specialty things for the community. How's that? Thanks, Keith. Like, I'm still trying to memorize all this. So that's where those sit. And then when you look at each other, and come on. And then here's all the other funds and where their total expenditures are to budget. And the same thing, all of those are within reason for where we're at for the half-year expenditure.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
Susanna, can you explain, like, that facilities fund is
probably not.
at...
Yeah, I can explain. I mean,
Oh,
part of
okay.
that is looking at things that are come out of facilities funds. So the needs assessment would be something that was budgeted, that we started. So although that number looks good right now, understand by the end of the year, we anticipate that'll be at or near 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, so you don't see too much yet. And this is basically looking at your materials and services and your personnel. Your capital outlay is not in here, your transfers are not in here, right? Because the capital outlays are special projects that were pre-approved and they're like a vehicle for the police department. That's not in here because this is looking at the things that are keeping the operations moving forward. So basically, at this point, you are in a stable place. What we've seen for our revenues and expenditures, about what we expect to see, and we're on track with what we've budgeted, and we are in a stable place. Any questions?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say, Susanna, I really appreciate that you've taken the time to do this and keep us updated. We were sorry not to see you at the last meeting, and we're glad to see you at this one. I also want to say good job to your management team, Keith, for keeping us at a reasonable level in our budget at this point of the year. So thank you to all of you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
One quick question, budget question. Lance, have we ever resolved that backup generator at the sewer plant? What's the status of that? Fix it or replace it?
Well, I find it interesting that you even know about backup generator at the plant. It leads me to believe one of my supervisors is talking to you, telling you information that probably isn't worthy of telling you, but no, we'll fix it.
Okay.
We're gonna fix it.
It's good to act once in a while like we know what's going on.
Oh, I see, understood.
Anyway, thank you, Susanna, for the report. Oh, and there's public comment at this point. So let's not ignore that and get everybody in a tizzy over it. So, public comments on this budget report. Anything? Okay, let's move on then. Resolution, that doesn't call for any voting or anything. Resolution number 999, declaring surplus property. Mr. Fleischman.
Good, thank you. Before you is Resolution 999, which would declare 2 parcels of land that are owned by the city as surplus property and set into motion the process to, I guess, divest ourselves of those properties. You may recall that back in November, the council reviewed a recommendation from staff to determine that these were surplus properties, and at that time you voted to dispose of them. In our checking with the city attorney, we determined that it's necessary to have this resolution formally declaring them as surplus. What the resolution does is, as I said, declare these as surplus, direct that they be offered for sale to the public by sealed bid, and in accordance with statute, requires actual public hearing be held prior to the sale with notice of that hearing in the paper. So that's what the resolution that you have before you does. The two parcels that are included in the resolution is a parcel on North Oak Ave at the corner of North Oak and West Water Street. West Water Street at this location is a paper street. It does not exist on the ground. This is a 4,500 square foot lot that was obtained from Marion County back in 1989. Presumably it was tax acquired property by the county. The second is a parcel at the south end of North Birch Ave that is approximately 1,000 square feet in area. It was obtained in 1979, and there's I think it's a memo from the then Public Works staff to the council or mayor from the early 80s saying that it was obtained for future extension of North Birch Ave. Here it is 45 years later, and we've done nothing about extending North Birch Ave, and it doesn't look like we have any plans to do so. So those are the two parcels that are described in the resolution.
Okay. All right.
Public comment.
Thank you, Dan. Public comment? Well, I'm going to try to stay focused on this. It's not easy. Public comment on this. Resolution number 999 declaring surplus property. We've heard the description. Any public comment? Council deliberation. What do you folks want to do with this? We have clear direction.
Yes.
Go ahead. Somebody.
Deliberation. Let's move to council decision.
Well, okay, a council decision then.
All right, Mr. Mayor, I would move that we adopt Resolution 999 as presented and declare the two properties as surplus.
Second.
Okay. All right. A motion and a second to adopt resolution number 999, which is a resolution declaring city-owned properties as surplus. And is there any discussion? Okay. Alyssa, you ready?
You bet.
Go ahead and poll the council on this, please.
Okay. Counselor Mullen?
Yes.
Counselor Patty?
Yes.
Counselor McDonald?
Yes.
Counselor Hook?
Yes.
Counselor Ort?
Yes.
Motion passed for 5-0.
Okay. Thank you. Moving right along. Resolution number 1000, 5-year local option tax for the partial support of the library, pool, and parks programs. Mr. Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before you is consideration of Resolution 1000, a 5-year renewal of the local option levy for partial support of the funding of the pool, library, and parks. Permanent tax rates for cities are set by statewide tax limitations imposed by Measures 47 and Measures 50. The city has relied on this local option levy since 1999 to help fund and maintain levels of service and operations and to assist with capital improvements. Their current proposal will go before voters for consideration on May 19th, 2020, assuming the council approves this resolution tonight. The city has proposed two changes to this levy to increase the assessment per thousand of assessed value from 60 cents to 70 cents and to increase the length of the levy from 4 years to 5 years. The levy is critical to the ongoing support of the pool library and includes a new focus on maintaining parks. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Question, comments?
Keith,
Go
just
ahead.
for the people viewing at home, if they're going to be viewing it on YouTube, just to make sure that we understand that this will for sure go before the voters and it's something that they have voted on every time.
That's correct. We've been to the voters since 1999, so this has been an ongoing levy that's been in operation to support these programs. So our library, our pools, and our parks. So our 4-year renewal is up, and so it's time for us to bring this back forward and take it back to the voters for consideration.
Follow up.
Okay, go ahead.
And so the only thing that the councils really would be doing is approving that it be on the, that you guys put it on the ballot.
Correct. What the option before you is to approve this so that it can go in front of the voters on that May 19th, 2020 election for the voters to decide whether to continue with the levy or to reject the levy.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions or thoughts?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Keith, what happens if it gets voted down?
We will have serious discussions about what to do in terms of, not so much with parks, but with the day-to-day operations and ongoing functions of the library and of the pool. We rely on this levy to help support the operations and the functions of those entities. So it would have a pretty devastating effect on those two issues. I kind of mentioned it briefly about Measure 47 and Measure 50 that passed by the state. It's a tax limitation, so we have a set limit on what we can set our tax rate on. So these levies are required in order to fund the service levels we would want. So we have had some discussions about that with the pool and with the library, and we hope that the community continues to support as they have in the past.
Thank you.
Okay, after the staff report and some council questions, public comments on this. Yes, Mr. Martinek. Bill?
Good evening again, Mayor, Council, and staff. I'm Bill Martinek, and I reside at 15556 Coon Hollow Road Southeast in Stayton. So I'm here to obviously speak in support of the levy. I did want to give a little bit of history here. I've been involved with 2 of the items for sure, the library and the pool. And for those of you that may not know the history dating back, the Stayton Community Pool was originally constructed as an outdoor-only facility. And so many years ago, I served on a committee appointed by the then mayor of Stayton. There was a bequeath given to the city to cover the pool. We worked for quite a while to put together a plan and to use the $1 million gift that was given, which was specifically to cover the pool and put it into operation. And although not everyone at the time was in favor of using that money for the pool, anyway, it was successful, and we now have a pool that serves not only the Stayton community, but brings in people from the outside. That was just something that was amazing to see that came together, and that's really why we have the pool that we have today. So keeping it operating is very important to a lot of people. Again, the Stayton Library fell into some of the same scenario there. That library site used to be the Stayton Fire Hall, and actually I worked a little bit on the demolition of the old fire hall and construction of the original library. Also, again, several community members came together to privately fund the expansion of the Stayton Library, and that's why it's now 5,000 square feet instead of, I think the original was maybe a little over 2. All things that were brought together by individuals from the community raising funds. I believe there's still to this day an ongoing yearly grant that comes to the city to operate the library, which I always looked at the operation of the library as a community system, not necessarily something that would be done by volunteers. So supported that, and I think if maybe I didn't hear right, but that I thought I heard that the emphasis of the funding that would come into here would be for city parks. Did I hear that wrong?
Go ahead. Keith, you had a comment on that?
No, I mean, the majority of the funding would be going towards the pool and the library. We are looking about trying to increase some of the funding to parks, but over 90% of the funding would go towards those two entities.
Okay. Well, anyway, just thank you for allowing me to do a little brief history there for maybe not everybody remembers or knows that those things happened, and that's why we have the pool that we have today and why we have the library that we have today. And so, continued funding of those two items, I believe, are critical to the city of Stayton.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bill, wasn't that an Bureau of Outdoor Recreation grant for $100,000 to put that above-ground summer pool in? Does that sound right?
I'm not really familiar with exactly what took place there. I know that I was personally involved in when Emery and Sons built the park. There originally, the parking lots and tennis courts and the other things, but I'm not really sure how it was tied. I think the pool was built separately from...
About 73?
But pretty much at the same time.
We were both
there.
a lot younger then.
Yeah. Well, so I can tell you a little bit about getting old. Today, I interviewed the grandson of a lady that I went to high school with, so that tells you a little bit.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Other comments public comments on that? On this item, local option tax? And Keith, reminder for me, we will go to the voters in May?
Correct.
On
May 19th.
On the increase or the total?
For the levy as
The whole levy? Okay. And the increase will be built into it. All right. Any other public comments, council deliberation?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to say that I am loving that we are still doing this and that we are going to be increasing it just a little bit because, the inflation happens, and I'm kind of curious if 70 cents per 1,000 is like enough, but I trust the math that's been done. But anyway, I just wanted to say that we have like the best library, and I went to the pool recently and it's had like a facelift, and my kids were so excited. And so, I mean, I know personally that I use it. I know a lot of people love our library. Even people from Salem will come out to our library because it has some awesome like activities going on. So if you haven't been to our library, it is amazing. Amazing.
It is.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I want to echo what Councilor Hook said. When I moved to this community, the library was touted by so many of the community members, especially because I have kids. It's a great place when there's, the weather's not the best, and get the kids out of the house. And there's so many projects. Janet does a fantastic job, her and her staff. She doesn't like the attention, but you really do a fantastic job with the activities and keeping kids occupied for, very low cost and most of the time free activities. And the pool. I have friends that come from Salem to have their kids swim here and do swimming lessons, and even met a family that comes in from Mill City, so it really is utilized by a lot of families in the area. So it's a really big deal. And our not only did the pool get a facelift, but even Pioneer Park got some new stairs on the park. We're excited about those. So thank you, Lance, for that. So little by little, but it's all very important and for our community. So thank you.
Okay. Council deliberation on Resolution 1000, 5-year local option tax for partial support of the library, pool, and park programs. Anything else? We ready to go to a decision? Then a motion would be in order, please.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that we approve Resolution 1000 as presented.
Okay.
A second.
I have a motion to approve Resolution 1000 as presented, a motion and a second. Are there any other comments? Alyssa, back to you. Would you poll the council, please?
Sure. Counselor Ort?
Yes.
Counselor Hook?
Yes.
Counselor Mullen?
Yes.
Counselor Patty?
Yes.
Counselor McDonald?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you. Next, for the evening, Stayton City Council rules. Mr. Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before you for consideration is Resolution 1001. At the January 21st, 2020 City Council meeting, the governing body had directed staff to bring back with modifications the Stayton City Council rules. On April 1st, 2019, the governing body adopted a council goal of complete update of the council rules. On April 15th of 2019, staff brought forward proposed changes to the council rules in the League of Oregon Cities White Paper on City Council rules and the City Tualatin City Council rules. On May 20th, 2019, the City Council adopted the Stayton City Council rules that we currently have. Staff has discussed this issue with the city attorney, and after that discussion, we are recommending not to make any changes to the current city council rules. If the governing body wishes to make changes to the council rules, then staff, after the conversation with the city attorney, recommends the following changes. To transition to one regular session council meeting and one council work session per calendar month, and to remove public comment from each agenda item and to allow for public comment at the beginning and the end of the meeting. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
So it's sounding like, Keith, this is for you. It's sounding like what you're saying is that the city attorney is like telling us, don't change this. So, and if we do, then we should be taking out public comment?
As you know, I can't give directly the advice of the city attorney, but what I can say is in the conversation there was concerns that the public comment after each agenda item would make it technically a public hearing, and so the city attorney would like to remove that portion of it, correct?
I like that too.
Mr. Mayor.
Put public comments at the end, beginning and end of the meeting. Isn't that the recommendation? Keith, excuse me.
It wouldn't be a recommendation. It would just be, based off of kind of what you had brought forward and what you wanted to see, which was, an additional agenda item brought back at the end. The recommendation would be, if you were to do that, to remove that item from that, so that after each agenda item there was not public comment.
Yeah, I do like that. Go ahead, Counselor. You.
Thank you. Keith, so that doesn't change it for like land use hearings, or if we have specific public hearings on something, we would still have those.
Correct.
So for clarification, like right now, or before we changed the rules, that's how we basically had it, and then we changed it so that people had a chance to basically comment on every item that we have.
Correct.
Okay.
Oh, do that again, please.
Okay, so
that seems to be contrary to what we just talked about, but go ahead. Reiterate what you just said, please. Counselor?
I think to answer the question, there is times where what we have to do is set by statute or by law. So
yes.
in a land use hearing or in serving a quasi-judicial, there would be regulations that we would have to follow,
right.
And that would not be able to change in this. So that's set by outside of our authority. Yeah. So this is just focusing on these items that would not fall under those items.
Mr. Mayor, does that make sense? I was just clarifying that there would still be public hearings on issues, obviously, that we had to have.
But this thing that we followed for a while now of having public comment at after each agenda item,
Mr. Mayor.
I guess it works, but yeah.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Keith, we already had a conversation about this, but just for the benefit of the council and the members in the audience present, can you kind of discuss the intent behind transitioning a regular session to a work session once a month?
The idea was basically, through the conversation with the city attorney, just a recommendation that would allow opportunity for a more informal gathering, for informational items could be done in a more informal gathering, in where some of these items that may take more discussion could be done at a round table and done in an environment where there can be more open discussion before it comes to the council. So we're basically not trying to, hash out these issues at the city council meeting per se. So in talking with the city attorney, the comment was, well, if they're going to make some changes, here are some changes that we would recommend that be made, and this is the reason why. And I talked to staff, and we're in agreement. The one concern is the charter does require us to have one city council meeting per month, so we would need to have some flexibility just to make sure we met that requirement and that we were doing city business at least once a month. Work session is different. There is no action items to be taken. There's no formal votes that can be taken. It's just basically informational session and then a discussion, and then hopefully giving council or staff direction from the council on items coming forward. In fact, this would be an item that potentially you could have in a work session, if you will, and then bring it forward after that discussion's happened.
Right. Mr. Mayor, one follow-up.
Yeah.
So with that, public is invited to those meetings, correct?
Correct. Public is invited to those meetings. You generally have those meetings in a more informal setting. A lot of times it's, you put tables out, you do it kind of like we do for our budget cycle. We've even talked about potentially doing some in the library. You don't want it to be as formal as this, and sometimes staff members in previous cities that I've been around, have go home and put on jeans because they really want to set the tone of it's an informal discussion. But
I think we might see some of that with this crowd here.
Yes. So no ties, right?
No.
And so I think that's it. The city attorney does a lot of work for other cities and thinks this is a positive way and that was his suggestion. So
by no ways is that meant to diminish public access to city council process and city councilors themselves?
No. It's the same thing. If the meeting is noticed, it's open to the public. The public can come and witness everything that happens.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Less formal without people yelling about rules every other sentence. I like that. I do like that. Even I would enjoy something like that. Go ahead, Counselor.
Keith, I have a question about if you guys had talked about or discussed there being public comment at the end or beginning of a work session, not during, but...
By definition, you don't have public comment at work sessions.
Okay.
And that's quoting your city attorney.
Sweet.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
So Keith, if we went to a system like that, then we would probably go through, because we've already talked about these things, like the agenda on our meeting would probably be fuller in that respect because we wouldn't have 2 meetings spreading things out. 2 meetings a month, we'd have just one. So they'd be fuller meetings, right?
I think the issue could be correct, that the city council meetings would probably be a longer meeting because there is work that has to be done by the city council, correct? But what you also hope is that through the working through the work sessions, if you will, that you can dive into subject matters in a deeper way, to have longer conversations and to address many of these things, so that a lot of the work by staff and a lot of discussions can be done. It gives staff more direction so that we know when we're bringing items forward in theory, we have an idea of what are the key elements. And it also provides us an opportunity to have more in-depth discussions, and not to pick on Susanna, but as we talk about what happens as we continue to be more transparent in our budget and all of that, to have more open dialogues and conversations so that we know we're providing information that's meaningful to you and not trying to necessarily assume that what you're getting out of that is helpful and meaningful and is giving you that what you need. So this is where we can have some of the discussions that we have at a staff level, at a council level, so that way we can make sure we're moving and acting in a way that fits the needs of as you guys as policymakers.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes. Go ahead.
Thank you. Keith, so am I understanding correctly that all the agenda items that would be up for the upcoming council meeting would be at that previous work session for us to discuss so that we've hashed everything out that we can?
I don't necessarily know at all times whether you would have something like that, but I think a lot of times the goal would be to have some of those items come forward, especially those items that are maybe more complicated or aren't as straightforward. Last time we had a pretty straightforward item, that really didn't require a lot of time, or we had discussed in the past. I don't know if you'd bring something into a work session that we already sort of had direction on, but I do think, yes, what the goal would be to work on those items in that work session and then bring them forward. So I wouldn't see there would be too many times we as a staff would have to adjust the way we currently do our agendas just to think in terms of that. So I think there'd be a natural adjustment period, but we can do that. Right now, we just set our agendas out 6 weeks, or 6 meetings is what we currently have kind of laid out. So we just have to make adjustments on, moving that work to work sessions and to make sure we have the business of the council covered as well.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes. Chris?
Keith, do the work sessions get videotaped and posted on YouTube? And
They can. It's definitely up to the council. I wouldn't be opposed by any stretch for having those work sessions videotaped.
Yeah, my concern would be that if we didn't, and we just had the city council, and we were moving the city council through decisions really quickly, where people weren't attending the work sessions, that there might be some concerns.
I think the hope would be that the city, the community would have an understanding of what goes into some of the analysis as well.
Thank you.
Follow up, Mr. Mayor?
That's what I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
Thanks. Keith, is there any reason that we couldn't just at least go over every agenda item, even if it's just a thing of we weren't going to talk about this because it's already been discussed, but let's check this box to make sure that no one had any last minute questions before because if we're going to only have one business meeting where we're up here at the dais, I don't want to be stuck up here talking about a whole bunch of stuff when we have twice as many agenda items. So if we can just be sure that everyone's like on board pretty much with.
I think there are examples of things, for instance, on the consent agenda, if we're doing OLCC licenses or something like that, that wouldn't necessarily need to come forward to that. But I think the idea would be we would, if we felt like there was anything that needed to be discussed or was, pretty much controversial or with something that would hasn't been straightforward, that we would want to have time to discuss it. Yes. So I think to answer your question, I do think there are some items that you just really would need to have, in council work sessions, and the idea behind a lot of those are to dive into some of the deeper subject matters. That wouldn't necessarily, some of these items on the agenda you could do pretty quickly without having to have a per se work session on it. But I think the goal would be that when we come to these, that everyone's prepared and that we've had the discussion that we needed to have had. And I think it's okay then too for the council if they feel like they need more time to say, let's take this back to a work session, right?
Yeah. Mr. Mayor.
Yes. Go
Keith,
ahead, David.
real quick, the mayor actually brought up a good point over here. As far as the resolution's adoption, if we were to do that, I see where in the new copy of the rules, we've added the allowance for public comment at the end of the meeting, but there's not really a mechanism, or there's no revisions under regular meetings and then work sessions under Chapter 2.
So what your motion was to bring forward the changes to the council rules with the items that we presented.
Well, I didn't make a motion yet. I'm just saying hypothetically.
No, but when your last motion, when you said to bring it back, you said bring it back with these changes to the council rules. So
yeah.
That's what we brought forward to you. We're following the direction of what you guys had said at the last meeting.
Right.
And so we brought those forward, but you can make changes. But you said last time in the motion of the second that this is what you wanted to see done, was these changes to be brought forward. So, but in having the conversations with the city attorney and that, we decided to make the recommendation to make no changes, but if you were, here's some things we would like to see instead.
Yeah. So you're waiting. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. But we didn't want to not come forward with what you said you wanted to do.
Right. Okay. Now I follow. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Are we ready for any public comment on this? Yeah. Hey, we've got public comment. Russ, and then gentleman in the back.
Russ Strohmeyer, 325 West Washington Street. Wow. Are you trying to silence the public or what? I mean, seriously. It was great being able to comment on different items, agenda items. And now you're saying we can't do that? If we were to approach one of the counselors before the meeting and talk to them about an agenda item, they're going to have to declare ex parte contact, maybe not vote. And now you're saying, let's not let the public in on this. Let's just tell them what we decide. I mean, here you were just saying how great it is to have the public here. You want us just here and be quiet, not say a word? Come on, guys. This is ridiculous. You want us to be a part of what's going on, then let us talk. I mean, seriously. We should have a say in each one of these agenda items as it has been. And then a chance at the end of the meeting like it was before. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Russ. Aaron? You got a name right.
Aaron Frichtel, 12326 Golf Lane Southeast, Sublimity. I also have a building in downtown Stayton. I would like to say that during the meeting, before the riled feelings, I think that it was great the interaction that we were having with the council, and I think that having public comment after in each section I think is valuable because you are not having to revisit what you were talking about before in the meeting. You're able to deal with it at the time. It makes more sense to be on topic and talk about the topic. And I think that the idea of having a work session is a great idea, but I don't know, are there some really heavy issues? I'm asking a question here. Are there some really heavy issues that the public should not be part of or should not have an intake or ability to comment on? And that's a concern I have because it seems like we're cutting down the ability for public, again, to comment and also for the work of the council to be split in two, as it is currently, seems to work, and it gets business accomplished. But if you take that to a once a month meeting with work sessions, it seems like you're slowing down the process. So that's concerns I have, but I would like the question addressed in some fashion. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Yeah, Bill?
Good evening again. Bill Martinek, 15556 Coon Hollow Road, Southeast, Stayton, Oregon. I think this sets a record for me, speaking 3 times in one meeting. But again, my position is that anything that done that somehow further restricts or eliminates public comment during the meetings is it's inappropriate. I share the last gentleman's sentiment that I believe the ability for the public to speak during the debate of an issue is a much more effective way for you to get public testimony rather than either trying to bunch it into a few minutes before the meeting. There are certain times when the 3 minutes that the public is allowed, I mean, it's just not enough. I mean, you as a council have unlimited ability to discuss all of the issues. You can spend an hour talking about an issue up here without any problem. And so to further put something in place that restricts or in some cases eliminates public testimony, I believe is inappropriate. Tonight, you had a council packet that I believe it's 262 pages long. I doubt if there are 3 people in the city that read the whole thing. I'm sure all of you read and studied the complete packet, but it took a long time for all of you to do that. And it's going to eliminating one of the public meetings and going to a work session where there's no public comment is, in my opinion, not an appropriate move. In the past, I've actually requested council work sessions, and when issues came up that were complicated and have actually been denied the request to have a public or to have a council work session to discuss certain issues. So anyway, and tonight, a very limited amount of the citizens of Stayton even really know what you're talking about tonight and what you're what you're doing. So at a minimum, I would request or ask that you do not take that action tonight, that you allow for more public input on the process of restricting public access to you as a governing body. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay. What do you folks think you want to do with this?
Mr. Mayor,
Counselor?
I would love to be able to say a couple of things. I'm just going to speak freely if that's all right. I agree with everything that they just said. I'm glad that they're here holding us accountable. I think that's amazing. I think this is a great conversation to be having about how our council meetings would be most effective. I'm definitely not in favor of taking away the public's voice in any way. I like having the public commenting on every single topic. I also think that there should be a time at the end of the meeting where the public can comment again after we've had our discussions of, like our council business and mayor's business, because there are things that we say where we're addressing questions that have been answered or that need to be answered during that time, and there may be something else that we've sparked in the public that they want to say. Now, I think that we should have a limit on how many times during one public comment you can come up to the podium, because we cannot have a back and forth. We need to have order. But I think that a work session is a good idea, because they are extremely helpful in getting into the weeds, which we just can't do here. It's really difficult to have a discussion with people when they're down a line versus straight across from you at a table where you can have a conversation. But I also think we should be considering that we have at least a public comment at the beginning of the work session, even if we don't want to have one at the end, because people are used to being able to come in here twice a month and voice their concerns. Now, whether those can be dealt with at that work session, okay, maybe they can't, but the voice should still be heard. So I highly suggest that we do not take away public comment. When we brought this over, it was my intention was for us to find out how we could hear the public more, not how we could hear them less. Because I also worry about, I have a note here, I worry that all of the things that we're doing in the work session, if we're getting into the weeds, there's no public comment during the work session, and then we're kind of like guiding ourselves into a decision even though we haven't made a decision. When we bring it to the council meeting, if we don't have public comment on every single one of those items, then people won't be able to talk about the specifics during our final discussion, like before we make the vote. Hey, I watched your guys' work session on YouTube, and this didn't make sense to me, so before you vote, please consider this. They need that last moment to make their plea for or against something. So that's my soapbox. I'm going to get off now.
Mr. Mayor?
Okay, Chris.
So just to clarify a couple of things, the problem that we were trying to solve with having this conversation over the last couple of meetings was we're trying to ensure that citizens have the opportunity and feel heard. But it was also, the other conversation was also to look for opportunities to engage with city government and finding the right venue to do that. So over the last week, I talked to the councilors, I talked to the city attorney, talked to the city manager, talked to the mayor, and I've got some general kind of takeaways from those conversations that I'd like to read. Number one, and I think this is something that's kind of fallen between the cracks, public comment should be a one-way street. It is not an opportunity for a back and forth. And the reason for that is you, the citizens, should have the right and the courtesy to speak freely without interruption. The other problem could be that a back and forth could potentially dissuade people from wanting to come to the podium to speak. So you get the time to speak freely without, again, us interrupting you. The other challenge is if items are brought up during public comment the counselors aren't necessarily prepared for those items, the conversation, those comments could rapidly become counterproductive. There are counselor meetings where there's a lot to get through, and that leads me to the next part, which is, so what is that forum? If items are brought up in public comment, counselors want to have a larger conversation. As Keith pointed out, we have the opportunity to ask city staff to add those for future agendas, like the homelessness conversation. We need to add that into future agendas. That way we have time to prepare, and citizens have the time to prepare for those public comments for those future agenda items. The other thing is we need to continue the outreach by council members within the public. I understand that there's ex-parte contact, but that ex-parte contact doesn't necessarily mean that the counselor is persuaded by those conversations and can't therefore vote. You should still come to the council meeting with an unbiased, open mind on the agenda items. So the outreach is good, the chatting with counselors, I'd like to see, obviously that's something we'd all like to see continue. And I'll speed up here. Those are great opportunities to speak directly with the people up here, to talk about challenges, concerns, and issues. And we should also continue to look for opportunities to follow up after meetings, and that was some of the other items. For those people who are sticking around, that we can go out, we can engage, and again, talk about stuff that was talked about. That the public comment, again, is really just that one-way street, and those direct conversations with the counselors can be much more robust.
Give and take?
Yes, give and take. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Other thoughts and questions and comments here? Councilor Ort, you...
Yes, I have a couple.
You seem eager over there.
I'm waiting patiently.
I know. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so I was looking at thinking about how we had our meetings previously, looking at the different examples that we got information from. So this is the LOC model rules for procedures for council meetings. And so this is just, options, right? So they have public comment on items on the agenda other than public hearings. And then then they have their public hearings, and then at the end they have public comments on items that are not on the agenda. So that could be one way that we could structure meetings. And then I also saw this in their public comment section where they explain a little bit more. It's on page 7 if you're interested, ladies and gentlemen. It says 2 periods for public comment will be reserved for every regular meeting of the council. Each period should not exceed a maximum of 30 minutes. And I feel like one of the challenges that we're facing is, yes, we want the public comment, but this is also this is our time, we're volunteers, and, we need to make sure that, we're getting work done in the time that we're here. So not that we don't want to hear from the public, but maybe if we were to set a time limit, and then if there were still more people that needed to talk, that we still needed to hear from in order to make decisions, we don't have to close the public hearing. We can push it over until the next one. So we have those options. So those are just things that I was thinking about. I would agree that each item, it makes things longer, but when people come and they have something specific they want to talk about, that having each item have its own public hearing is helpful. A work session, by definition, I had this written down, so a work session by definition doesn't have public comment, and that is absolutely not to silence the voices of the public, but it is, again, for us to be able to hash out more issues, because we have a lot of questions and that we need answers to. But I would think that should be after we hear from the public on those specific issues. So something's brought to the council, we hear the public comment, and then we come back once we hear because at that time then we'll have questions for staff and things like that, and then we can take it to a work session and hash it out at that point, given all the information. Because I would agree with Councilor Hook that having the work session beforehand and kind of coming to a conclusion before you heard from the public, that kind of defeats the whole purpose. So we want to hear from the public first. Those are my thoughts.
And
Mr.
some
Mayor?
councils do that, have a work session at 6 o'clock and a business meeting at 7 or something like that. That's one pattern.
I'm just
We
saying
don't do.
I would want to have a work session on something after hearing all the information, getting the questions answered, and then, so kind of whatever if we went to that model, whatever we did at the work session would really be what we talked about the previous meeting, not not for the next meeting, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, again,
Mr. Mayor.
work sessions and business meetings. Yeah. Hash out the concerns, come back later, make decisions. Yeah. Mr. Fleischman.
I'm sorry, can I follow up to that real quick? So that's not to say that
Yeah.
once you have the work session, that you wouldn't then, once it's brought back up here, that we then wouldn't be able to talk about it again.
Correct.
Does that make sense? So you can still have the opportunity, because Councilor Hook, you mentioned something to Keith about would we just go through and like kind of tick off the items, but that doesn't mean that there isn't an opportunity to still have a deliberation of however long we want.
Right.
Right.
Okay. All right. We're moving in a direction, I guess. Yes.
Yeah. I'm curious if there's a way that we could kind of have like, you were just talking about how sometimes there's a work session before the meeting, and I'm not saying that we go that direction, but maybe we have like a mini city council meeting that has the public comment and the business from the mayor and the city council and from the city manager, just like for 30 minutes, so that there's time for that public comment before our work session. Then we close out and then go into a work session. And it can still be informal over at the library where we're still sitting around a table, but it just, I feel like there just might be some opportunity then for people to have public comment. So we're still having a work session and we're still having 2 city council meetings, but like one doesn't really have a bunch of agenda items.
Okay.
I'm just curious about that, like if that's a possibility that we can
what I
do.
mentioned. It's just
And
one
that
model.
might be
Yeah, the idea of the.
I can hear Keith breathing over here, so it's a question for him.
Mr. Mayor, I think the concern is, and I had a conversation with the city attorney. I know, Chris, you had a conversation with the city attorney. The city attorney isn't here, right? And the challenge that we have is we have angry people at the audience. I'm conveying what our city attorney is advising, right? And I think the same type thing with the work session. I'm conveying what the city attorney is advising in terms of the council being a functional group and doing the work that needs to be done. And by definition, a work session is that. And so I'm struggling with that, and having the city attorney here is not an option with our current that. And I appreciate our city attorney. I think he has great advice. I think it's put me and staff in a difficult position, and I think having a city attorney here with some of these things, and maybe not just me or not just Chris hearing what we're hearing, that is one of the big things that we continue to kind of go into the weeds on some of these issues, because it puts us in an awkward situation of doing things in an unorthodox way. And so I know we had talked about what to do with the city attorney, but with our current situation, the cost to have them present is prohibitive, and not wanting to be here unless there's specific reason to be here. So these are the kind of discussions where I think a city attorney, and even with some of the other things, would be very beneficial and helpful.
Follow up, Mr. Mayor.
All right.
Keith, I've had a lot of frustration with this new process of the city attorney that we have. I attended council meetings when we had a city attorney sitting right next to you, and it seemed to flow a lot better for at least the questions being answered. I don't feel like my questions really ever get answered because I feel like I always get the thing of, well, the city attorney doesn't want us to talk about it, like because they want to protect themselves. And I want a city attorney here. Like, I just feel like that is what would be best for the city. So my question is, what can we do as a council to change our city attorney once we've changed to this one? Because we just got this one like last year.
The city attorney isn't appointed by me. It's an appointment of a recommendation of the mayor to the council, so that isn't something that I have any oversight over. That would follow the charter, the city charter, and following that guideline of what to do and how that would work.
So, Mr. Mayor, I have a question for you.
Okay, go ahead.
Can we have a discussion soon about what we can do about our city attorney situation? Because I just don't feel like someone that works down in Eugene is really working out. I think we need someone closer by that can actually be accessible to everyone, not just the council president. Like, not that I want to call the attorney, but here at the meeting, if I have a question, I want to be able to ask.
Yeah, let's set a work session and talk about it.
I think we tried. I mean, I feel like we tried with this attorney, and you try and sometimes it doesn't work out.
Okay. Well, let's set a special meeting where we can talk about what we want to do.
That would be awesome.
Certainly. I'm okay with that.
And I have one more follow-up.
It's been kind of a workable situation. It's been frustrating, probably for everyone involved. And we can move in another direction. Sure. Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
As we wallow around in this tonight, are we any closer to thinking about how we want to modify, if at all, these council rules and meeting schedules and whatnot? Go ahead, Bill.
I am. I have a quick clarification, and this is hopefully an easier one, just being the newbie. Regarding work sessions, two things. A, we said that during work sessions, the public is allowed, but what, if any, communication between the public and the council is allowed during a work session?
By definition, work sessions are so the council can do their work without being interrupted, to have a free and open discussion, to be able to do that and to do so without, that's kind of, and no decisions being made at that point, right?
So the public's allowed, they just have to watch.
Public is allowed and can come and watch. We can record the meetings. It's the same type thing with everything else. And I think it's important to note that public comment is not a requirement. It's advised that you allow public comment, and then the discussion we're having is how much public comment you do allow, but there is no requirement from a city to do that. That's a courtesy that you offer, correct? And so work sessions are designed so that you can do the business without that.
Understood. Okay, and then the second part was, what are our guidelines or requirements as far as scheduling work sessions and how much notice we have to give?
Same thing we do with other meetings, just properly noticing it and putting it out, having an agenda.
So we can technically add one whenever we want. We just have to give proper notice. Okay, that's all.
Where to go with this, folks?
Mr. Mayor.
I suppose we could do nothing tonight. Go ahead, Councilor.
Thank you. I just really feel like the work session route is good, but I just think that we need to really consider having some type of a public comment area, maybe not attached to the work session, but as its own meeting beforehand, so that I ran for this office because I care about what people have to say. I knocked doors. I knocked hundreds of doors. I was probably one of the first people that did that in Stayton, is what I hear. And I know that these counselors knock doors too, because I was with them walking door to door. We were knocking doors together. Public opinion and comment matters to me. I do also want to say that even if something changes here, I still have an email address. I still have a phone number. I have a Facebook page. You are welcome to stop me on the street. I know that for sure Councilor Ort feels the same way. Like, she is constantly preaching about, like, here's my card, call me, talk to me. And we care about what you guys have to say. The great part of a work session is what Keith was saying. You have uninterrupted time to really dive into something, and there are no decisions made whatsoever. It's just a conversation. You're hashing out all your questions. You're getting answers for those, or they're saying, "Oh, I don't have an answer for that, but here, let me go and get that answer for you," so that at the meeting, when you're making the decision, we have every answer that you needed. And so I guess what I would want to know, if we're going to do a work session, is that there's a report out after every subject saying, from the city staff saying, this is what we have agreed that we are going to go and do. You guys have given us clear direction. There are no more questions. We will have this for you, or tell you why we don't. Because I don't want to get to a meeting and then not be able to make a decision and slow down business because we can't get the answers that we're looking for. Anyway.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Seems to me a good compromise on this, to the point of some of our citizens earlier. If we do the work session once a month and remove public comment, so it's only at the front of the back, that it is going to be perceived as taking away all those public comment opportunities. So it seems like a good compromise would be to allow the work session, but then keep the public comments after each agenda item. Just food for thought.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
All right. Yes.
I know that I don't know everything that the city attorney did or didn't say, but it still does not take care of having that public comment at the end of the meeting, which was kind of the whole reason that we brought this up here to begin with. And I like the discussion that we're having. I like the idea of the work session. I think it's a great idea. I've been wanting work sessions since it started on the council, but it doesn't address that. So I feel like we should at least address the fact that we would not be adding public comment at the end, and that we should take ownership of that if that's what we're going to be doing. I don't agree with that, though. I think we should have it at the end if we can.
Okay, so how do we get there?
Mr.
How do we
Mayor?
get here from there?
Mr. Mayor, can you make, Councilor, can you make a clarification? Because I feel like Councilor Mullins said to do that at the end. So have
During
the
each
work-
agenda
So
item.
I can clarify that.
Okay,
I would
I'm
have
sorry, can
absolutely
you-
no issues with what Councilor Hook is suggesting, which is the public comment after each agenda during the council meeting and one at the end. I would be completely fine with that.
So
if that was the
beginning
motion.
each agenda item and at the end.
That I'm saying I would be okay with that, yes.
Okay. Follow up, Mr. Mayor.
How did we get there with what we've got in front of us?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'm a little bit worried that we have been given advice, or kind of advice from the attorney, that maybe doing this change would go against their recommendation to us. And so I don't know if it puts Keith in a weird spot to say yes or no, so I don't want to put you in a weird spot either, Keith, but if you are at liberty to say whether that would be going against their recommendation and you think it would be detrimental for some reason that I guess we don't get to know. And this is, just to be clear, guys, this is not Keith that is saying that he can't answer. Like, he's protecting our taxpayer dollars by not answering, so that there's no, like, lawsuits and stuff. So, yeah.
I've tried to put forward what the city attorney has sort of said. I think one of the things with our current thing, which is I think the public needs to know, we have probably one of the most robust public comments of any city in the state right now. So, and I can say that definitively is true. So, I mean, this is where we're at with this. And so, what the recommendation of the city attorney is he felt uncomfortable basically with the comments after each agenda item because it makes it a public hearing. And so, his recommendation would be to remove that. And I'll just say it at this point because that's sort of where we're at. So, we kind of talked about what the conversation was with the city attorney. I had asked other people to reach out as well to have that conversation. based off of the discussion on this.
Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, go ahead.
Keith, did he say why, so having the public comments after each agenda item makes it a public hearing, and why is he concerned about
He
that,
did
did
not.
he say?
I put in the memo what his recommendation, basically was. His recommendation was not make any changes. But if you're going to make changes, here's the recommendation changes that he would have.
Mr. Mayor.
There must have been some concern that with each of those agenda items considered a public hearing, then that leaves them open to challenge?
I honestly didn't press them any further and don't know. I guess the other comment I would say is the recommendation would be for someone to have one opportunity to speak during the meeting, so you don't have somebody getting up literally, and having 15 comments during a meeting.
Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes?
Chief, that was my takeaway too, was the counterproductivity of, a meeting gone amok, but, part of the decorum, part of the charter rules, talks about the mayor's seat and how you have the ability to control the decorum of said meeting, as does the council. So, again, I never got the sense that I didn't hear the term illegal or anything along that lines. So a recommendation, one way or the other, it leaves the decision to us to make. There was nothing,
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
I would like to say that whatever we do tonight, if we could, bring that back to the city attorney for him to look at and just make sure that there isn't anything illegal, or that we're, that it is, not going to put us in a liable situation type of thing, just to, whatever we decide, just to have him kind of look it over.
Okay.
To make sure there's nothing that's breaking a statute.
Yeah.
So what would you like to do?
I just have one follow-up, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm curious, would it even be helpful at all to have the public comment if we were to move it in between or before the subject matter, like as it's introduced, like you say, what it's like, basically one-liner of what it's about, and then if that makes a difference, of having the public comment before we actually start discussing it, so that people can say, hey, I've read this over and I have these comments, and then hopefully all of their comments will be answered during the actual discussion at that point. I don't know if that changes the...
Oh, it seems like you'd want to have at least an introduction, the staff introductions and whatnot before.
Correct.
Yeah, that's why I was like, I didn't know if it would be helpful at all, so
Yeah.
decided to throw it out there.
No, it's all right. No, we've been asked to go fly a kite. What is that about, Anyway, no, that's all right. Thank you. Are we moving in a direction here, folks?
I'm trying to find the motions in our 216
A lot of stuff here.
pages.
Mr. Mayor, I would move to, I would move to, approve the resolution and take the staff's recommendation to leave the rules as is, as approved in May 2019.
Okay, Ben, would you do that one more time for me?
Sorry, my motion is to make no changes and to leave the rules as set May 2019.
Seconded.
So that number 3 there on the bottom of the recommendations there. If the council chooses not to take action, no motion? Or?
I think you get to make a motion on that, yeah.
I'm sorry?
I think you can make a motion on that, just to as been done.
So a motion to do nothing?
Correct.
Is that your intent, Ben?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, can we, from Keith, just get clarification what that means? That means that the public comment continues to stay, no work sessions.
Everything stays
That
as
everything
is.
stays,
Just
city
to
council
stay.
meetings with the public comments between each agenda, in each agenda item.
Things as they are.
Thank you.
I've got a motion. Is there a second, please?
Yes, you guys.
I've already seconded.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry, David. Okay. Discussion.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
I believe that no action is still making a decision, and it's not fixing what someone from the public brought forward as an issue. And I think that we have viable solutions in front of us that we could be doing. I don't know if that means that we should have a work session on this or not, but so that we can get a motion put together that makes more sense and has more time to be well thought out with detail. But I don't support not addressing the public comment by doing nothing.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I would just say that, the intent was to get more community input, but as you've just brought up, and I think it's a really good point, we really do need the city attorney in the room. And before making huge changes to council rules, I would love to see a city attorney in the room so we kind of see what that flow looks like to a regular session meeting. And that is the reason I've seconded this motion.
Okay. All right. I have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Let's go to a vote then. Alyssa, would you poll the group, please?
Yes. Counselor McDonald?
Yes?
Counselor Hook?
No.
Counselor Mullen?
Yes.
Counselor Patty?
Yes.
Counselor Ort?
No.
Motion passes 3-2.
3-2, okay. And concerns duly noted. Okay, let's move right along here. I don't have anything else this evening. Counselors?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
So someone had brought up, and it's been such a long meeting now, probably my fault, I'm not sorry, that the $20,000 could be used, it was Mr. Martinek, that the $20,000 for the community improvement grants should be used, or maybe it was Mr. Strohmeyer, just kidding, Mr. Strohmeyer, that it should be used for the sidewalks. I wanted to really caution us from pulling from such a wonderful opportunity for some of these community members. We do have a budget to help out with this, with the sidewalks. I think that there is enough money to go around and still help people that need help getting their neighborhood more livable, or it just makes it a better place to live when you know that you have the support of the city to get bigger projects done. Now, I also want to